Here we go. Another episode. This is going to be an educational one targeted towards you folks in your late teens up through your mid-20s. We're going to talk a little bit about credit score, or what I like to sometimes jokingly call our slave score, our slave report. Now, all jokes aside, it's actually really important for you to maintain a good credit score. I'm going to get into why, but if one of your goals is to save money and burn less money, which ties into my whole theory on burn rate and making more money, which I will have an episode on. If you want to spend less money and save more, you need to maintain a good credit score. And there's a lot of facets to this point, but I've learned all these lessons throughout my own life. And luckily, I didn't have to learn them all the hard way with this particular topic, like I did some other topics that I like to talk about. I was blessed to have a family that lived pretty much debt-free and did everything with outright ownership, the ability to outright pay for things. And it didn't just happen, they made it happen like that. But those values were always stressed and kind of beaten into me. And I've always lived my life like that, even when I wasn't being, let's say, legitimate, or when I was running wild. I even handled my business like that. But credit score, it directly affects the price of a lot of things that most people don't consider and don't really realize. Probably one of the most overlooked things is cost to insure. So if you have like car insurance, renter's insurance, things of that nature, they are going to cost a lot more if you have a bad credit score. One other thing that a lot of people don't think about is a lot of employers and a lot of landlords actually do care about your credit score. A small-time landlord that has rental houses, let's say, if he's intelligent, he's going to check your credit, because your credit is a good sign of how reliable you are at paying. And with a rental property, you paying is very important. But if you get into the economics of rentals, you need to try to maintain full occupancy as much as possible, and you need to get your payments as reliably as possible, especially in places with high property taxes. But the laws on eviction in most states, coupled with the taxes and the cost of maintenance, makes it so that they need their money. So if they're intelligent, they're going to look at your credit. Cost to borrow. Cost to borrow are also affected by credit. And this one most people know about, but the better your credit score, the cheaper it is generally to borrow. And that's also going to affect how much money you pay. So if you, let's say, get a mortgage or an auto loan or a personal loan from a bank, they are going to pull your credit. And based on your credit report and your credit score, it's going to determine the types of interest rates you're going to get on that loan. So it is actually 100% more expensive to live with a poor credit score than it is a good credit score. Now, most people pay 2 to 3 times the amount that I do for auto insurance. And this isn't all just credit score based, but partially. So let's say you want to get your auto insurance cheaper. There's a lot of ways you can affect that. One of them is with your credit score. Another one is with defensive driving courses. Most areas that will give you a reduction in auto insurance rates. The other one is to be a responsible driver to begin with. If you're out there getting in accidents and using your insurance, or at fault accidents, or you're getting points on your license from speeding and traffic crime and stuff like that, it's all going to be much more expensive. Also, the vehicle that you drive can affect that. I believe, according to my insurance agent, I am the second cheapest person to insure that he's ever come across. And I've heard horror stories from some people about how much their insurance is just because they're irresponsible. So it costs you a lot of money to be irresponsible with things of that nature. Your credit score, your driving record. And you don't ever consider these things when you're a teenager or you're in your 20s, because you're young, you think you know it all, and you just haven't heard these ideas. So that's why I wanted to make a video on this, just to point out these few facts. And I'm sure there's a lot more that I'm glossing over, but this should just be enough to give you a general idea of why it is wise to maintain a good credit score. Now, I'm going to mention a few other things about this. Where I live, I don't know if this is true everywhere, but where I live, your credit score gets below a certain threshold, you can't have an energy bill in your name. That's a pretty big problem if you're living on your own. You're going to have to put that energy bill in someone else's name, and anyone that's rational or sane isn't going to put an energy bill in their name for someone with poor credit to pay. I wouldn't even do that for a friend. So, that's something you really should consider too. I've met plenty of people in my life that can't even get an energy bill in their name. So, more things to consider there. I've seen people lose job opportunities over their credit score. I've seen people have to basically write essays on why their credit score is so poor to get a job. And it's going to certainly look quite bad if you have an employer that checks your credit score and it's like 350 or something insane like that. Now, there's a lot of things that affect your credit score. And truth be told, I don't know them all. And I've tried to figure it out, but the algorithms they use for computing it are extremely complex. I've even called people and specifically asked them. And no, I don't think one person can actually accurately describe how it's calculated. But what I do know is that your reliability of payment is a big factor. The other factor is, at any given time, how much of your credit line is actually being utilized. On the flip side of that coin, how much you owe as a percentage of your credit line. So we went over reliability and credit lines of credit. So if you're reliably paying more lines of credit, that will positively affect you. And I know there's at least a half dozen other things that affect it, but basically be reliable, don't miss payments. And a good rule of thumb with a credit card is to never let your credit card become your primary form of payment, which is a mistake a lot of people are making. Your credit card was designed and originally marketed as an easy way to pay that was kind of a backup or for traveling. And now it's like, oh, I need a soda, let me pull out my credit card. That's ridiculous. Your credit card should be used in a controlled manner, a strictly controlled manner. You should know everything that's going on to that card, and you should know ahead of time that you have the ability to pay it. If you find yourself in a position in life where you're routinely having to rely on a credit card to pay for things because you don't have the money, you are headed down a long, slippery slope. And if you slip on that slope, you're going to get buried. And once you get buried, you're eventually going to lose the ability to properly manage that debt. And I've seen it happen to dozens of people. So if you're going to use a credit card, use it in a strictly controlled manner. Know that you have the money to pay off the credit card before you ever even get a bill, and pay it off before it revolves and starts accruing interest. If you were making the minimum payment on your credit card every month, you're losing. You're paying interest, and you're going to end up paying much more money than what you spent. And that's what they're hoping for. They're hoping to make a profit on that. But what you should be using it for is to build your credit. So if you're a teen and you have no credit, or let's say you lived your life primarily in cash, which I basically did that until I was in my 20s. If you do that, you're going to not have any credit at all. And in a lot of cases, not having credit at all is worse than having marginal credit. So people are going to be really resistant to loan anything to you or give you a credit card. If you're young, I would suggest looking into a secured credit card and starting to build your credit ASAP. The sooner the better. Now, here's the other thing that people don't really think about. If you have no credit or poor credit, you're basically throwing out the dream of owning or buying a home or anything like that. And it's sad to see when people bury themselves and an idea like that goes pretty much off the table just because their credit's so poor and they've got so much debt built up. But it happens all the time. If you want to actually own something one day, you can't get buried in the credit, and you need to have good credit. So I hope, especially you younger folks, will take all this into consideration. I'm not a financial advisor. This is just a layman's viewpoint, as all my videos are. But I think it addresses one issue that is predominant, especially with the lost generation, but also even with the baby boomers, Generation X, all those generations. Basically, since World War II ended, people have started living beyond their means in a much larger number, and now, there's almost no grounding in reality whatsoever. Consider this the lightning rod for the lost generation. Just a layman's simple tips and tricks episode for you. Credit score, lost generation.